Possession crucial from this. How much longer will the referee allow? Dublin lead by a point, and there's the whistle. It's over. It's over.
We earned it by winning the last 2 matches on the road, and that's not going to be taken away from us.
But what I love in hurling, I love players that will never give in.
He hits it. It's over the bar. Oh, holy Moses.
Hello, welcome to the RTÉ GAA Podcast. Mikey, Stafford and Rory O'Neill with you, and we've been joined by Eamonn Fitzmaurice to look ahead to a not so quiet weekend of football. How are you doing, Eamonn? Are you fit? Are you ready for this weekend?
Good. Looking forward to it, Mikey.
Very good. I've chosen this gargantuan podcast. We'll have Shane Dowling coming up later. This is my final podcast. I'm taking a break from it for a while. After about 5 years, Rory, I'd say, is it?
It must be at that stage, all right.
Four and a half years, maybe, yeah. I'm going to go focus on other projects, as people say in instances like this, i.e. my day job. Going to go focus a bit more on that.
I thought you were going to say you were going to take up refereeing or something there, Mikey, which is... I was just you mentioned gargantuan, and I just think it's interesting, right? There's 27 intercounty fixtures over the 2 days, which is at all different levels, obviously, you know, with Joe McDonough, but they're all intercounty fixtures. So that's 27 referees, 108 match day officials, obviously then 108 umpires. You're probably talking anywhere, and I'd say let's take it on average of about 30 stewards, and that would be more certainly the bigger venues. So they could certainly the big games have anywhere between 50, 80. So you're heading towards maybe 1,000 people to put the games on before you talk about admin, support staff, backroom staff, all of whom, by the way, or certainly nearly all of whom won't be getting a penny. It's just an extraordinary undertaking what the GAA are taking on over the starting this weekend, and it's phenomenal, really, and that's all, by the way, to the backdrop of club activity, hammer and tongs. You know, it's like there's games all over the country at that level too. So I just don't know who has the time to go to any matches at the moment. There's so much stuff to try and follow, but anyway.
Yeah. So anyway. There'll be a professional broadcaster here on Monday to sift through the 27 matches. Well, not all of them, obviously. We won't ask her to do that.
Put manners on us.
Yeah, Jackie Hurley will be taking over in the hot seat for the podcast. The Jackie Hurley, as in the Sunday game presenter. So, an upgrade, I'd say, modestly. So, good luck to Jackie. Rory will be staying on.
Don't be putting yourself down, Mikey.
Don't, exactly.
Hey, I'm not presenting this. Nobody asked me to present the Sunday game, you know.
I
wrote all those letters.
I thought you were going in some direction to do with your super predictions that you were going to.
I'm setting up a tipping website, David. Anyway, lads, let's get into it. I think we'll start with Roscommon v Galway, which does feature one team that have already been out, and I know we have a lot of teams making their bow this weekend, Eamon, but I think this is very interesting. Roscommon are obviously a team with momentum. They've downed one of their hated rivals, and they have one more hated rival on the horizon now, and they're welcoming them to the Hyde, which is obviously an advantage for Roscommon. Galway had a very good league. They're beating All-Ireland finalists, coming in with, having got the band back together up front in terms of getting their marquee forwards back. It's set up to be a very, very good game, you would think, with a good seeding on the line, obviously, for Sam Maguire.
Oh, big time, Mikey. We better be careful with how we analyse Roscommon now, or Davy Burke will be giving out about us.
Eamon, I fancy them to win, by the way.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Oh, you're best in class, Rory. Best in class.
Anyway, I suppose. But I don't know where he got the notion that people were writing them off. I thought that was a small bit of a misnomer.
Kerry managers never had to do that, or could never do that with a straight face. But pretty much every other inter-county team has had a manager at some point, Eamon, I think, who has said, "They're writing you off, lads. They're writing you off." So it's managerial 101 for most people outside Kerry, I think.
I'd say Davy probably sifted through everything and he found one paragraph somewhere that he was able to use. Because I think in general people were very impressed with Roscommon throughout the league, and
still are, yeah.
Their performance against Mayo. I suppose what I'll be interested to see is if they can bring that level of intensity again to the contest the next day. It'll probably be the challenge for them, because their work rate, Davy himself has mentioned a good few times about how proud they are of their defensive record, how proud they are of the way that they're shutting teams down at the back. But their work rate from their forwards against Mayo was incredible. The likes of Donny Smith, who possibly in a previous existence mightn't have been noted for working as hard as he did. So they've a serious thing going. We mentioned it before that during the league, some of their big wins, particularly the 3 wins early in the league, they came from losing positions in the second half. Their bench was hugely important. They were resilient. They were gritty. So they have a lot of the ingredients now. In terms of the weekend, it's another step up and challenge again. I know Galway had a disappointing league final, but the likes of Comer is going to be 3 weeks further down the line. Shane Welch is going to have another 3 weeks of sharpening up. He'll probably kick all his outside frees with his right foot this time after his Bannister has probably told him in the meantime to leave off the left-footed 45s until they're 6 or 7 points up. But it's going to be a great contest. I think it's going to be a great game. I'm up there on Sunday, and I'm looking forward to it.
Rory, are Roscommon, okay, they were written off by somebody, but since after the match, have they gotten a bit of a raw deal? There seems to be this narrative growing that they're like, I don't know, in some way, kind of an anti-football team. Like they drag teams down into the quagmire in some way, as if 90% of inter-county teams weren't doing the same thing in the league. There's this idea, like, are Roscommon, I don't watch them in that way. I think they're very, they're very well drilled. As Eamonn says, they've great resilience. They can come from behind and beat teams. But I don't see them as being any more negative or defensive than, the vast majority of the top teams.
They're exactly the same. And they just play to their strengths. I don't know what else any management or any team is expected to do. And part of their strengths, I think, is their ability to be aggressive, to go after the big players on the opposition's team. They usually get their matchup spot on, but they have a fantastic spring, and it's more than a sprinkling. Like in Diarmuid Murtagh's form, and Ben O'Carroll, and even Conor Cox coming on. Donny Smith the last day was so busy, and as Eamonn mentioned, in terms of his work rate, but also, to ghost in at the last minute and clip off the goal, which obviously was a rebounded shot, but at the same time, he right place, right time. They've got good forwards. I think their problem I think they'll struggle on Sunday coming, because I was looking at the league table last night. Galway have scored the lowest in Division 1, out with safe except Donegal. So they're not shooting the lights out, and they will be dependent upon Shane Walsh to an extent to try and pick up some of that burden. But equally interesting was Galway's defensive record. They are by far and away the toughest team to score against. So if Roscommon want to get into an arm wrestle and jump down into the trenches, Galway will say, "Let's go, lads," because this is a Galway team that I certainly, if we saw the way they went up to Armagh midway through the league, they didn't mind, eking out an ugly contest. And they've obviously got incredible players if they want to play, if people want to go and have a game of sexy football. But in terms of their teakness, their teak tough, their ability to win games in different types of ways, I think what you'll probably see is potentially two teams might look to cancel each other out, as I mentioned before, and then ultimately what can get cancelled is a game of football. I don't necessarily see Galway going after Roscommon. I think it might be slightly cagey to begin with, but Galway definitely do need to get more. I mean, we saw Rob Finnerty really arrive and mark himself out last year on the scene. He got totally snuffed out in last year's All-Ireland semi-final. No, that was obviously because he had Chrissy McCaig for company for the day, and that could happen to a bishop. But so if Galway get more and aren't so heavily reliant, because obviously they're going to pinpoint Shane Walsh as the main threat, may even be doubled up. But if Galway get more from their attack, I think they've got more strings to their bow. And I think the 2-week lead in now, like there's no way Galway really can afford to go out and lose a league final and then lose the first championship match, because I think it would set them back as a group in such a big way. And I fancy them to go up to the Hyde on Sunday and win.
Yeah. Rory's point there, Eamonn, that, you know, if it's unlikely to be a shooting contest. If it would suit Galway. But you do look at that Galway forward line with the addition of Shane Walsh and Damien Comer on top of Johnny Heaney and Rob Finnerty, who were kind of doing a lot of the shovel work in the early rounds. Without those two lads, you know, they've added a little bit here and there, obviously, as well. It does seem like a kind of a forward line that can either win a shootout, or also, if it's going to be 9-8, they'll be the lads less likely to miss that crucial chance. If that might be a slightly simplistic way of looking at it, but as much the laurels we've laid at the feet of the Roscommon forward unit, you kind of square them up against each other, and you do kind of think Galway have that little something extra.
They probably have, Mikey, and I suppose Matthew Tierney was another player throughout the league who he'd a massive league, and when the other kind of big guns were absent, he really stood up. And, you know, in periods of games last year, he was playing centre forward, but he's playing at 10 now, and it's really suiting him, and it's suiting him as a kick-out option. It's suiting him coming in from that side, scoring as well. And they work it really well where he stays wide and he comes in hard on the loop, and he gets on the ball and he's coming in his left and he kicks it over the bar. Peter Cook is a massive addition again this year. Tom O'Culhan was kind of in and out last year. He'd injuries. He came on in the league final. He's a dangerous player as well. So they have serious depth up front all over the field. They've massive depth. But I think Rory's point is on the money in terms of they're very adaptable. That, you know, even going back to the league games again, that I was above at the game in the athletic grounds, an arm wrestle, a battle where it wasn't. I enjoyed the game, but it wasn't an easy watch maybe for a lot of supporters that night. But when you go into the trenches, they can do that. They're quite happy to do that. For the last regulation league game against Kerry and Tuam,
it was slightly more open and slightly more up and down, and they were happy to play that game too. You know, and
they were happy and well able to play that game too. And I think John Daly obviously got an all-star last year, but I think he's gone on to another level again this year. And he's allowing them to play it both ways, that if they need to drop an extra body in the likes of Dylan McHugh, they can do that. But if they have to rely on John Daly just to mind the house on his own, and for the rest of them to play a more attacking game, they can do that as well. So they're really adaptable, and depending on what the opposition bring, they're able to change and suit themselves to that game. So again, it'll be interesting. It will be an interesting game. And remember as well, Roscommon beat them in the league in Pearse Stadium as well, in Galway. I think it was round 2, was maybe when David Comer got injured. So and I think that I've always found as well with Roscommon is that if you listen to the former Galway players or managers, or the former Mayo players or managers, they really have their antennae up for them. They worry about them. They know that they're seriously capable of putting a hole in them in Connacht. So it should be a great battle, whatever type of game it was. Yeah. I mean, we were expecting Tyrone Monaghan to be kind of a physical battle last weekend, and it turned into a great game of football. So don't be surprised.
Connacht is the new Ulster, I think, Eamonn.
Well, last year it was a high scoring game. In the Connacht final, it was a high scoring game between the two teams, and the first day out today against Mayo, conditions were terrible that day as well, which probably fed into that kind of tough, intense battle. So we might, even though the weather forecast isn't great again for the weekend, but we might have a serious game of football.
We get nice weather during the week. That's nice for us, Yeah. But all right, Rory, in a word, who's winning?
Yeah, I just feel that Galway, I think they need to the reset button. 2 weeks, I think, is nearly ideal just to digest and park the league final, and having that match.
In 3 weeks, isn't it?
Is it 3 weekends? It possibly is.
Roscommon haven't played for 2 weeks, so it has to be 3 weeks.
Oh, that's right. No, sorry, that's it, Chad. Yeah, apologies. It is 3 weeks. You're right. And I was thinking that's actually perfect. So, like, yeah, I think the 3-week break will definitely help them. And I just think pound for pound they're better. And I think Galway are genuine All-Ireland contenders. And I just don't think Roscommon are. And I think that, like, Galway to win.
Oh, you're in trouble now.
I know.
Eamonn, come on now. Mayo beat Galway in. Or sorry, the form lines don't say it should be that straightforward. Surely, Eamonn, no.
If you were like what you need now to come up on your screen is, you know, when all the X's and the Y's start flying around the screen, Mikey. You're the man for all that kind of stuff. The farm lines and everything else. But no, I'm with Rory. Apologies to Davy and Roscommon. We're not writing you off. We know it's going to be that if Galway are to win, they're going to have to seriously earn this. But
I think it'll be tight.
Yeah, I think Galway, their squad is so deep, and they're a bit further down the road on their journey than possibly Roscommon are.
Yeah. Just to be contrarian, I won't have to answer for it next week. I was Roscommon, you're going to win, Davy. You're going to win. Don't tell the players I said that, though. It won't help fuel them. The other Connacht semi-final then it's very novel, Eamon. It's Saturday afternoon. It's on GAA Go, and let's be honest, it probably wouldn't have been on GAA Go if Leitrim had beat New York, but New York beat Leitrim, their first ever Connacht championship win. So they're travelling to Markievicz Park to play a Sligo team who. Now, the seniors are a pretty self-contained unit, I think, but they will be buoyed by the fact that their under-20s are after going back-to-back. And I believe the first Sligo team to ever win back-to-back Connacht championships at any grade. So Sligo football will feel it is on the rise, and it is on the rise. You know, they're rising a division in the league. They couldn't countenance, allowing New York a second championship win and a historic first one on Irish soil, could they?
You would think not, Mikey. And it is massive achievement for those Sligo under-20s. They beat Mayo on the way to the final as well, didn't they?
They beat Roscommon, Mayo and Galway all away from home.
That's
amazing.
That's some championship to win now, Eamon. Like,
that's massive. Yeah, that's massive. And I heard Des mentioning that on the 7:30 bulletin as well this morning, Mikey, that it was the first Sligo team ever to win back-to-back championships. So it's a huge achievement, and it will absolutely bring energy probably to the county and the supporters more so than the senior squad themselves, because they'll be very zoned in on their own job. But look, Sligo have been impressive. And they've got promoted out of Division 4, and they've been doing everything that they've needed to do all throughout the season so far. But they're going to be seriously on guard for New York. I think for New York, probably the things that are challenging for them this time is that I'd say there was good celebrations. Number one, after their win in New York a couple of weeks ago, and the whole that they're traveling this time. And all of that is probably going to be a factor. But also, they have a game under their belt now, and they have some serious players. And, that they have the American-born lads, but they have some serious players that have good experience of championship at this side of the Atlantic as well. So I think it's going to be a serious battle again. I genuinely think New York are going to really put it up to Sligo.
So what you're saying, Eamon, is you've got very nervous accountants in Croke Park on Saturday afternoon.
Oh my God!
Have you seen the figures being quoted if they manage to win this game? Yeah, it's like the Colum Keys reckons it's 500,000.
Oh yeah, that would seem almost conservative to me. Flying 30-odd people back and forth for 3 matches.
It'll be more than 30. It'll be 40 people, I'd say. Yeah.
Jesus, that is
I think that's going to be serious battle again, Mikey. Look, in fairness to Sligo, like I said, they've answered all the questions that have been asked of them so far this year, and they have been very impressive. But I think New York are really going to test their pulse.
Well, I think New York. We kind of get caught up in kind of the romantic side of it and the kind of the idea of what it used to be. But the way it is, like, you just look at that team, like you could argue that there might have been like a combined New York Leitrim 11 or 15, before the match, before the result was even came in. You could probably say it would have been a very close thing, or even ahead from you, like Owen Kieran, Johnny Glynn, Mark Ellis, Adrian Varley, Shane Carty, Peter Fox. These guys are Rory are like, some of them are like seasoned inter-county footballers with experience of big matches in big venues. So Markievicz Park isn't, like, for some of the lads, like, in fairness to the New York born lads, like Markievicz Park is going to seem like something out of this world, you'd imagine, not for its size or anything, but just for the sheer difference to anything they've been in before. But for a lot of their teammates, Markievicz Park is Markievicz Park.
Yeah, and I think there is, I know the game was live on GA Go, and I know that it was obviously available for anybody to watch and see, and I'm sure Tony McEntee will have poured over it and done his homework. But there is still an element of the unknown with them. You only have one match to go on, so you don't necessarily know what kind of patterns are at play here, or what, who's the really key players that we need to be kind of snuffing out. Now, look, he'll have his ideas, and obviously Shane Carty was outstanding the last day, but like, that's not to say someone else could crop up that they mightn't have ever even heard of or thought of. And I think that element of unknown does add a small little bit of spice to it from a Sligo perspective. But I just think the winds of momentum in behind Sligo football at the minute, for them to, as Eamonn just mentioned, to get promotion out of Division 4, given what's gone on with the under-20s, given what's gone on, they won a Connacht schools as well, obviously, as we know, through Summerhill. And sometimes those underage successes, and I know you mentioned earlier that they can be self-contained units at senior level, but sometimes that spurs adult teams on, and to actually say, hang on a second, we're the flagship team in this county here now, so we now need to go out and do our bit. And could I see them slipping up at home to New York on Saturday in Markievicz Park? No.
Only 2 years since they didn't have a championship, or 3 years since they didn't have a championship game at all. So I remember that during COVID.
Yeah.
By quirk of fate. Eamonn, you're giving New York a shot. Are they your tip, or do you think Sligo will get through?
I'm giving them a shot, Mike. And to back up the point that Rory was making there about players that you might know, Rob Wharton, that's centre back for New York. He's a serious player. He's from Renard in Kerry. My last year in charge in 2018. We actually invited him into the squad, but he got he dislocate his shoulder, or something happened to him in that winter, and he didn't actually end up coming in with us at all afterwards. But
what club was he in? What club was he in?
Renard. He'd be the same club as Killian Young below in South Kerry. I saw him playing a couple of games in Kerry last year, and he was outstanding. He's a bit of a rugby background as well. He's a serious player. So the kind of the Johnny Glenn's, the Owen McAvoy's, the Mark Ellis's, the Shane Carty's, Adrian Varley, we kind of know them, but there's plenty of other fellas like that then that the wider public might know.
Tony Mack might know.
Yeah, he probably does.
He probably does, in fairness.
Who am I going for? Sligo barely, Mikey. I'm giving them the kiss of death, but it would not shock me if New York won, to be honest.
Fair enough. I haven't got enough romance in me to back New York this time. I think so. And to be honest with you, Sligo making a kind of final and getting into Sam Maguire in the first year of the new system, there is a bit of romance to that as well, let's be honest, and what's going on in Sligo football. Let's move on to Munster. There's a game to decide which there's a Sam Maguire playoff going on in the semi-final between Limerick and Clare, and also we get to see the bow of the reigning All-Ireland champions. Eamonn, I was interested to read Darragh Ó Sé's column in the Irish Times yesterday. He erred his way 11,000 words to say Dublin are absolutely favourites for the All-Ireland, without a shadow of a doubt. But he did make a couple of fair points about Kerry, and one was, whereas Dublin have added a few significant players, mostly old faces returning, he kind of feels that Kerry, if anything, in Moran, they've kind of lost, a significant player and not really added anybody new. Would you agree with that, or do you think the squad has been bolstered since last year?
I must read the text from Darragh now to see what the party line is there.
Was there not a conclave first before you came out this weekend? All the Kerry media. No, isn't that normally what happens? Eamonn?
If you get this wrong, you're going to be consigned to the Blaskets for the weekend.
We're waiting for the group stages, Rory.
Yeah, that's it.
No, yeah, look, I absolutely can see what the point Darragh's making there. The only thing I'd say is that what I felt after the league was that a share of players got a lot of exposure, the likes of Barry Sullivan in the middle of the field, Tony Brosnan, who else now?
Darragh Roach got some game.
Darragh Roach, Donal O'Sullivan. I think Darragh Roach is out, all right, for a while. Donal O'Sullivan, Stefan O'Cunbar, until he got that in a good bit of exposure. And while, I think Barry O'Sullivan and Donal O'Sullivan in particular, and Tony maybe in some of the games as well, they did quite well. I think it's from now on we'll see the benefit of that league campaign to them maybe. So I think some of them are a couple of steps further down the road maybe than they were this time last year. And, it was a kind of a disjointed league for Kerry. There was bodies coming and going. They were laid back. The couple of the losses on the road. So it was basically about surviving in Division 1 and then getting to this point and having a squad ready to go. So I think Kerry will be happy out, to be honest, Mikey. And I think while they mightn't have added many players, they've certainly got experience into more players, and hopefully that'll stand to them as the season goes on.
Yeah, it's new system, Rory, kind of same structure in a way for Kerry. They get this far and everybody knows we get to the start of the championship, everybody knows they're contenders and they're one of the best teams in the country, but nobody expects to see anything close to their full hand until they get out of Munster. And now with the round robin stage, you could say they could have another 2 games where maybe they won't have to be at their peak. So, it's the same old Kerry, isn't it? Like, we know they're good, but we won't have any idea how good they are for quite a while.
Yeah, but I still think you could say that about a lot of teams. I mean, how does everybody feel about Tyrone right now? Does anyone really know where they are, what they're at? And we often hear, and particularly coming out of Tyrone, by the way, how easy Kerry have it and how hard it is for Tyrone. Well, newsflash, Tyrone will have a handier run to the All-Ireland series than Kerry will this year, because Kerry will probably have to play at least 2 matches in Munster, whereas Tyrone now are sat up at the feet. And then when the All-Ireland series starts, everybody starts at the same starting line now for the first time ever. So those kind of whinges and moans about how easy Kerry have had it, to my mind, are put to bed with this new system by and large. I think in terms of the weekend and what we're going to see from them. Look, David Clifford is playing. I mean, what more do people want in the Gaelic football sense than to watch David Clifford in action? And I actually think to a certain extent that it shows a huge maturity. I've watched a couple of their games back over the last couple of weeks, and I don't know if he really overextended himself too much during the league, but I think that to me shows a smart.
Jesus, he has to rest at some stage during his 13-month season.
But I think that to me shows a maturity in his play. Like David Clifford is probably saying to himself, and this is me just guessing now, do I really need to be going around here having fellas punching 7 shades of what out of me? What will I ultimately be judged on, and when do I have to deliver for Kerry? I have to deliver in the middle of the summer, in the middle of championship, when the fat is in the fryer, and he will do that. And I think we might necessarily see it this weekend, because look, in fairness, Tipperary's graph is trending in the wrong direction, and relegation back down to Division 4, and it will be a very, very comfortable win for Kerry. But they're still Kerry. They're still interesting. There's always a story around them, and people will be curious to see, what kind of a team he puts out, what the solution potentially at midfield is in the short, medium, and long term. And I think it'll be it'll be a comfortable win, but still plenty to chew over.
Yeah, Eamonn, there's no question about a win, and that's almost a quirk of fate, to be fair, because 2-3 years ago, Tipperary in a Munster semi-final would have been deemed the toughest match that they could have got, and Tipperary have slid down the rankings somewhat. Kind of quite alarming. Obviously, a golden generation of players have aged and moved on mostly, you know, or you know, they're just not available at the moment. But like, you know, in 2020, 21, this would have been a real tricky poser for Kerry. You know, you wouldn't have even had to yell about it. It would have been, but now it isn't that. It's kind of it's a shame, isn't it? Because we talk a lot about how Munster needs strong teams. Every province needs strong teams. And Tipperary were the second strongest team in Munster for quite a few years. And Jesus, you can make an argument now that they're only stronger than Waterford.
Yeah, and like I suppose the Munster Championship always did get that kind of it was looked down upon, but to be fair, Tipperary, Clare and Cork were all kind of a similar standard there for a while, which was a decent standard, and they'd actually do quite well in a lot of provinces, but because they were coming up against Kerry year in, year out, they weren't able to make maybe a bit of progress. I think with Clare, I think we played Clare nearly every season there for a while in Munster semi-finals, and they never got to go to the other side of the draw and possibly make a Munster final. But yeah, no, Tipperary, like, look, Bill Maher's another fella that is lining out with New York rather than Tipperary this weekend, and he's a good player.
Conor Gleeson gone for the season with an injury. Michael Quinlivan travelling. Like, they've lost key players, haven't they, Eamonn?
They have, big time, and they were a good team. We played them in a Munster final in 2016, and they were, you know, they got to an All-Ireland. Did they get to the All-Ireland semi-final that year?
Yeah.
Was it that year? They did make a semi one year, yeah.
Yeah, and they got to an All-Ireland semi-final.
Twice. They got to two All-Ireland semi-finals. Yeah. They got to the COVID semi-final.
Yeah.
Oh, of course they did,
2016, two.
In 2020, they were in the semi-final as well, obviously. So, you know, they won the Munster Championship only the 3 years ago. So it is a kind of an alarming drop in the meantime. But for this weekend, Kerry are going to win, but within the Kerry camp, they're going to be very focused, and they're going to give Tipperary 100% respect and 100% of their attention. And that's the way we always approach those games. And regardless of the opposition or even the team winning, you're thinking about your own spot and where you are in the pecking order as an individual player, that if you're getting 1 to 15 jersey, well, you have to hold on to it, because you know there's at least one, if not 2 or 3 fellas looking for that jersey. And if you don't deliver and they come on with 20 minutes to go and suddenly they're in the box seat for the next game, and you could end up sitting down for a couple of games. So Kerry will be very motivated this weekend, Mikey, and I imagine, you know, after the league, which was so disjointed, be anxious now to get up and running and to start going in the right direction.
Can I ask you something just there about that internal kind of you know, you're kind of how you drive yourselves, because how that carries on afterwards, because obviously you go in saying, no, never mind Tipperary's league position there, you know, this is going to be a tough match, we have to drive ourselves on, you want to keep your jersey. I'm just wondering how long that lasts after a game. Are you kind of almost brainwashed? I'm not asked this about a Kerry, but it came up the other day in a women's rugby respect, because there was an England player interviewed ahead of their match against Ireland, and she was talking about the match against Wales. We were really pleased with the win in Wales in what was a difficult game. Our defence was outstanding. They won 59-3. Now, the England women's rugby team are like, they're a machine. They're pretty much unbeatable. But like, it can't have been a difficult game. He won 59-3, but like, and I don't think she's saying it out of like she's trying to be polite. I'm wondering just a little bit about the mindset where, like, you say a game's going to be difficult beforehand. Do you just kind of almost brainwash yourself into thinking it's a difficult game? And even if Kerry win 5-24 to 3 points at the weekend, they'll still be like, no, it was a difficult game. It was a difficult game. Do you just kind of lock into a mindset in that respect?
I don't know. I think after the game, you'd always be honest if you felt that it was maybe a bit easier than you expected before. And certainly beforehand, you're going to be ready for a challenge, and you're going to be, expecting the opposition to be bringing everything, and that you have to be at your best as an individual and as a team to win. If you win pulling up, then you're probably a bit disappointed afterwards, because you want to be challenged and you want the group to be challenged and to be tested. Even if you win comfortably and, you know, individuals have been tested, you know, maybe that player that was talking had a tough day out. She didn't play as well as she normally can play, because, you know, we always, you say it ourselves, backs in particular, the opposition will always have one forward who'd play well, and you don't want to be the back who's getting the roasting. I remember we played Kilkenny in the league one time. We were in Division 2, and it was kind of the 2A, 2B, and I won't say who it was, but one of the lads got a bit of a roasting above in Kilkenny, and he's still living it down. So you don't want to be that fella.
Yeah, that's amazing. But one Kilkenny lad was going to bring his hurl out with him, was he?
Yeah.
Sorry, no offense to the Kilkenny.
No, he was
senior
good.
football.
He was a good player.
It was probably Henry Shevlin, was it?
The other semi, Rory, is now form lines again would say, I know they're the two teams relegated from Division 2, but Clare's relegation was of a slightly different colour, and they beat Limerick 218 to 9 points in what was a depressing dead rubber at the end of the league. But at the same time, we only have to go back 12 months to Limerick beating Clare in Ennis in a dramatic penalty shootout. So it's not a foregone conclusion for Colin Collins' team by any means.
Definitely not. But at the same time, if they were after doing what they might consider the hard work by taking Cork out of the Munster Championship and then go and blow it, that's kind of something that Cork usually do, as opposed to Clare. So I think plus I think the last year on penalties, I think that'll definitely stick in their craw. We don't necessarily. I don't think there'll be an element of complacency, but there will be pressure to a degree, believe it or not. I do think on Limerick to a small extent, in that, like, when you have a manager eviction mid-season, generally there is a bounce off it. We didn't really see it towards the back end of the league. Their performances did improve. They were still relegated. Obviously, it was a difficult division for them and a difficult campaign. So I suppose if we are going to see anything from Limerick this season, because look, the reality is if they're heading into the Tailteann Cup, and you won't see it because there's 100 million matches every weekend. The Tailteann Cup will disappear out of sight completely. But if we are going to see anything on in any way sense on a national sense, it's probably got to happen this weekend. And but I just think Clare, again, to go back to under-20s, I was watching under-20s the other night, and just the way they're coached again, like, they were very, very unlucky actually not to beat Kerry below Tralee. And this stupid rule where if a fella gets sent off and you can replace a guy straight away, and he was a key player for Kerry as well. So, but look, in the end, I just thought, like, there was another good crop of young Clare footballers, well conditioned, well coached, really good attitude, giving everything for the jersey. And I think just Clare football once again is looking to kind of go full circle, and I think they should win. They need to win, and they should.
Okay, time is actually running against us. We knew this was going to happen. I know.
Eamonn
needs to get going soon enough, so we'll quickly fly through the other games. Predictions, if nothing else. Cavan Armagh has been one circled on the diary, I think, Eamonn, since kind of the new structure was kind of drawn up, and it was like, everybody thought if there's one team trapped in Tailteann Cup that are probably a Sam Maguire team, it's Cavan, and they did nothing to disprove that theory during the league. Armagh, the golden children of last year's championship, great to watch, have somewhat regressed, it has to be said. There's no denying that. Like, the league table doesn't lie. So this is a closer game than maybe even we thought it would be when we got excited about it at the start of the year.
Big time, yeah, Mikey. Look, I think the advantage maybe that Armagh have is that they have a game under their belt, and for the likes of Conor Turbitt to play as well as he did the last day out against Antrim, I think that's a great thing for Armagh to have. That maybe this perception of the over reliance on the likes of Rian O'Neill. Conor Turbitt has been used, a good bit as an impact sub, but after the way he performed the last day, he's going to have to start, and it might give their attack a small bit more variety and not that over dependence on Rian O'Neill. For Cavan, I know, talking to a couple of people within Cavan, they're quite confident about the weekend. The supporters themselves, that they really fancy it, and that they feel they're going well. And again, from the league, that they have great momentum from the league, that they're two Division 2 teams now, and Cavan are getting closer to where you'd expect them to be, Division 2, Division 1 team. So it's going to be another great game this weekend. in terms of who's going to win it, I don't know. I genuinely don't know.
No, I'll forgive you. That's one name I won't even press you for a winner. That's Rory. It's a toss-up, isn't it? This one.
Wouldn't have a clue either.
Rightful.
Like, not genuinely not a clue. I just like Armagh haven't beaten Cavan in the championship since 2014. You go back 9 years. They've met 3 times in that intervening period, and Cavan win every time. They're at home. They're leveling out, I would suggest, maybe in terms of league football. Now, obviously, championship football is very different, but Cavan have no hang-ups about playing Armagh whatsoever, and I think they'll relish this. But it's a very, very hard one to call. I mean, it would be a tough pill to swallow now for Armagh. Although would it? I mean, we just don't know. But this game, impossible to call. Wouldn't have an absolute clue. Once they don't start fighting, do you remember a couple of years ago actually when there was they started boxing the heads off each other in the parade?
A fighting in Armagh game.
Do you remember that? They were lining up.
Yeah, I do.
They were lining up in the parade, and I think it was either Cavan or Armagh. I can't remember which who, but stood behind the wrong flag. And then next thing, they got kicked off. There was an RTÉ. No, I don't think it was the RTÉ band, but it was a kind of a kids band. Was there? You've seen it turn around. It's about 20 lads boxing the heads off each other. So I hope they have the flags in the right place.
Yes, yeah. Well, if we're to believe anything, the Ulster Championship doesn't have that same fire and brimstone to it anymore.
They love a parade.
They do. Yeah. Down Donegal. Briefly, Eamonn, again, a match that now this one might have a different perspective from the start of the league as well. You know, down after a terrible 2022 where nothing went right, are resurgent, and Donegal are living Down's 2022 nightmare this year, aren't they? It's very hard to make a case for Donegal doing anything at the moment unless pride, it can be as powerful a motivator as you hope, because they're just losing players left, right, and centre to injury, retirement, travel. It's crazy.
It is. It's crazy, Mikey. And look, if you're looking at the momentum graphs, you're definitely saying that Down are going to win this one. But I don't know. Obviously, when you don't know what's going on inside in the Donegal camp, I think you mentioned it there, the word pride, and pride in themselves, first of all, as individuals, and pride in their county. They had scheduled a training camp, I think, in Carton House. After the league for championship, that went ahead, and if they've circled the wagons there, which can often happen in those camps, and if they've developed the good old never goes out of fashion siege mentality, and they're bringing that and a bit of pride, they could be dangerous, because absolutely, they've lost players, but they still have an awful lot of very good players, and no more than what Rory mentioned about Limerick, that when a manager is turfed out in the middle of the season, there's a pressure on the players to perform and to unite and to show something. Otherwise, it's just going to be a complete write-off of the season. So I'm actually expecting a reaction from Donegal this weekend. I still think there's a lot of talent there. Aidan O'Rourke has been around the block. He's an experienced coach. He's a good operator. And if they can pull together, they can still cause problems for teams. I know it's probably going against everything that's gone so far in 2023, but I just think that if Donegal have united to the level that they should be uniting, they could be dangerous.
Yeah. Briefly then on the Leinster Championship, Rory, and I think playing the 4 quarterfinals on the same afternoon is a nice idea. It adds a layer of excitement to it. And when you actually look at the fixtures, it just adds to the argument that take Dublin out of the Leinster Championship and it would probably be the best provincial championship. Like Westmeath, Louth should win it. Westmeath by no means a write-off. Kildare v Wicklow. Kildare are the better team, but Wicklow are the form team, you would say. Laois v Dublin, it's hard to make a case for that being much of a contest. But then Offaly v Meath that's a really interesting one as well, isn't it? There's 3 really hard to call matches there, I would argue.
There's a very even there's always been a very even standard in Leinster, Dublin aside, and I suppose that's the nature of the new system probably alleviates that pressure point and the focus that was on the paucity of the Leinster Championship to a degree, and I think that's probably one of the driving factors behind why John Horan, a dub, brought it in the first place, because that was one of the major gripes every year, was how easy Dublin were having it and how bad it is to see teams getting these kinds of pastings, which is probably what's going to happen to Laois. No, with all due respect, which usually means no respect on Saturday. But the other games are like, well, look, you'd expect Kildare to beat Wicklow. I mean, Westmeath against Louth.
I'm not saying. I know. I'm a native son now. I don't think Kildare Wicklow is a foregone conclusion by any means.
No. And like Westmeath against Louth, that game is in Navan. Like Louth, that's nearly a home venue to a certain extent for Louth at the minute. Now, obviously, they played other matches in RD, but you know, I like all these games will be very, very interesting. Laois Dublin aside, really interesting matches. But how much comment, how much focus, how much attention? I know it's a bugbear.
There's only one being shown live on GA Go as well, and that's the one that we don't think is actually going to be a contest. Eamon, who do you think is going to come out in these four? I mean, I won't ask for much analysis. Just kind of throw a pin at the wall there and see who. We'll take it that you think Laois are going to overcome Dublin, and then after that, who's going to
win? No, that wouldn't come in with Darragh's column at all. No, Dublin are going to win there. So Dublin will win there. They're all very interesting games, but I think the jeopardy that's in the Offaly Meath game is huge. It makes it an absolutely huge game for both counties, but especially for Meath and for Colm O'Rourke's project. You know, like if they lose this, they're definitely in the Tailteann Cup, aren't they?
Who, Meath?
Yeah.
I think so.
Because
yes,
they're the sixth ranked team in Division 2.
Oh, yeah,
so
yeah.
Clare, Limerick, Clare beating Cork, Meath were
yeah.
I think you're right.
So that's an absolutely massive game for Meath. That you know, they need to get to the Leinster final now to guarantee their Sam Maguire status. So it's a huge game for them, and you know, O'Connor Park in Tullamore, it's going to be a sticky one. It'll be a hard one for them to get over. So that's a very interesting game. I think Louth Westmeath, Louth are going very well. They're shutting it down at the back. Westmeath are scoring a ball of goal. So whichever one of those elements win, your say is gonna win there. And Kildare should be beating Wicklow, but again, you know, going with the farm lines, Wicklow are going to seriously put it up to them. So there are some great games there as well.
Yeah, that's it. Leinster Championship, that's where it's at. Eamon, thank you very much. We'll let you go. Myself and Rory will be back in a moment, and we will be talking to Shane Dowling about the start of the All-Ireland Hurling Championship.
He hits it! It's over the bar! Oh, holy Moses!
Shane Dowling has joined us. Look ahead to the start of the Munster and Leinster Hurling Championships. How are you, Shane?
Morning, Mikey. Very good.
It's a relief, Shane. All the shadow boxing, all the pretend hurling matches that we've supposedly been watching for the last couple of months. We get down to the real business now, huh?
Yeah, I'd say there's been no supposedly watching. That's what we were watching is a bit of shadow boxing. So listen, anyway, everything is pushed back to one side now, and the league is firmly to the back of everybody's memories. And listen, it's all systems going for the weekend. And I know, listeners, many people will talk about, you know, is it starting too early and all that goes with it, and it's a huge conversation in itself. But at the same time, it's upon us now, and it's something that everybody can look forward to. And I won't say short in the winter, because obviously we're going into a different time of the year, but at the same time, the weather hasn't been fantastic. So it's listen, I think it's going to bring everybody's moods up anyway.
Give us just an idea from a player's point of view, Shane, what it's like within a camp between league and championship, and kind of any little differences you'd notice. I'm guessing the intensity in training, as high as it might be for the league, probably goes up. Do the A versus B games have an extra edge? Is the manager more on edge? Is he asking more of people? Like, or is it very player driven? I'm guessing it's a noticeable change in atmosphere from your last league game to your first championship game. I'm just wondering, is there any way you could kind of put your finger on it?
I think it probably depends what county you're in, where you're looking at going, and how long you've been out of the league. I mean, if you were to take either Limerick or Kilkenny, I mean, they haven't had much turnaround time. So if they're looking at increasing their training sessions or their intensity in a 2-week block, well, then they could no, I want to say behind. I don't imagine Limerick will be left behind, but I mean, you can't just turn it on in 2 weeks' time, right? So I would imagine they would have been at a fairly high level coming up to the league final. Whereas you look at a Waterford that were maybe off for a month or whatever, were able to go away for a week, probably, have a bit of a meeting, park the league, and then say, right, now it's time to really go at it. Whereas, as I said, Limerick and Kilkenny wouldn't have the luxury for that. So some teams would have started to build up earlier, i.e. a Limerick or Kilkenny, because they had no choice but to get to that level of intensity for a league final, whereas other teams were maybe just slowly getting there. But I think once you come to 3 or 4 weeks out from championship, Mikey, everybody notices the weather generally gets better, the ground gets harder, and as you said, their managers probably become under a bit more pressure and a bit more animated.
Yeah. Would there be more nerves, on an individual basis, kind of the bus ride to a championship match than the last league match? Like, is it just the atmosphere changes, I'm presuming, does it?
It does, and I can speak from my own experience there. I suppose when you the game inside the Gaelic grounds, I drive down Guinness Road past the Woodfield, and down Long, and there'd be crowds on top of the road, guard escorts. It's championship time, no matter whether it's April or whether it's June. Nobody, when you're a player in that moment, you don't actually know what month it is. You just know it's Munster Championship, and or I can only speak from that side, but I'd imagine obviously the Leinster Championship is the same. So no, there's a big difference.
Yeah. Okay. Look, we'll get on to the games. Rory, Waterford v Limerick is kind of the first of the Munster games, obviously, on Sunday. We'll get on to the Leinster games that are being played on Saturday, and we'll discuss those afterwards. But Waterford Limerick, 2:00 live on RTÉ 2. Waterford have no home advantage, which has been a problem for a couple of years. So this has been played in Semple Stadium, which you listen to any manager or any player in Munster, there's not a county that doesn't like playing in Semple Stadium. So it's no great disadvantage, but at the same time, Waterford might wanted to have made things a little less comfortable for Limerick and bring them down to if they could have, but it's not to be. Work continues in Watt Park.
But Waterford's record since the round robin came in is appalling. I don't know, have they one win?
They've one win as far as I remember. Yeah. So
has Walsh Park in that time played a significant role? You could probably say it hasn't. And if you go back through the history and traditions of Waterford hurling, a lot of their, I suppose, landmark victories have usually come in Semple Stadium. So I don't necessarily see the ground playing too much of a factor, bar the fact that it might affect the support element. If it was played in Walsh Park, they'd probably have a bit more of a vocal home support, which might make a small little bit of a percentage of a difference. But I think, look, going up to Semple Stadium and taking on Limerick, in some ways, from a Waterford perspective, it's nearly the perfect match, because nobody really gives them a chance. And I mean, that's kind of an unusual situation for Waterford hurling to be going in. They're not expected to win the game. They've been kind of a bit of a mystery to me, and I don't know whether Shane would agree. I don't know what to make of them. I don't really know what was going on during the league campaign. There was obviously some selection and personnel issues. There were some injuries. There's all the stuff about Desi Hutchinson and where he should play. We know that Austin Gleeson is potentially in trouble for Sunday, but they'll have a good few of their mainstays back, and they've found a couple of players in the league as well. I'm very impressed with the lad. Is it Patrick or Podrick Fitzgerald up in the Patrick, isn't it, Shane? Yeah. Very impressed with him. So I'd imagine he's probably going to start possibly in a two-man full forward line with Desi. And then I'd say it'll be all hands to the pump out around the middle to try and... I don't think keep the score down. I think it's probably to try and make the game a bit more of a war of attrition and make it more competitive. But sure, Limerick will be grand with that.
Yeah. They've had a week abroad, Shane, Waterford, which... From talking to Shane McGrath here, he's just talking about just the huge amount of work he can get done in a week abroad, and that's important for Davy, because I think a lot of people might realise it's a long time since Davy was in Waterford, and actually Pádraig Mahoney was the last link to, he would have been the last player who played under Davy, and he retired this year. So not that he hasn't been short of opportunities to kind of instill his tactics and philosophy on the players, but a week in Portugal, he could do a hell of a lot more of that. So there's no doubt that Waterford will be more attuned, and I'm sure they've kind of to what Davy's thinking, and they'll have it better drilled for championship, you'd have to expect.
Yeah, funny. I met a fairly well-known, prominent Waterford figure recently who I won't name, and he said, just chatting away, and he said, I'm telling you, boy, he says, I hear Waterford flying over in Portugal. So what you mean? Oh, he said, I heard that, that they had real open conversations and they told everyone blah, 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 blah. Well, I said, I can tell you one thing for sure. I said, if Waterford had a fantastic time in Portugal, I said, you wouldn't know about it. And the fact that you do know about it tells you they didn't have a fantastic time, because you should be hearing nothing from what happened over there. I think if they did have a great time, well that's great for them, but nobody should know about it. So whether that was the case or not, who knows? But as you said, they were away for a week, and they should definitely come back more aligned to what's going on. I do think, Mikey, I'm going to throw it out there, that this could be the maddest game of hurling that we've ever witnessed.
Technically.
Every sort of way, right? Because I was scrolling through TikTok last night, right, and I saw a goal that John Carroll got, Tipperary versus Wexford in 2001 or something, and it was Waterford or Wexford defender got the ball, fired it up the field, caught fire. It was just like table tennis over and back for about a minute, until eventually John Carroll got the ball, ran in and kicked it into the net, right? My point is that that was the game of hurling back then. It's definitely changed, and we'll talk about that, right? But I think this is going to go at a whole new level, because in fairness to Davy, right, if he's nothing else, he's an extremely deep thinker about the game. And there's been so much talk about, Barry Nash getting up the field, and how many people do you leave inside, and you put a man marking, etc., right? So he's definitely going to come up with something. I don't know what it is. I don't think anyone.
No one knows.
But I'll tell you one thing. If he continues the tactics that he used in the league, i.e. that puck out, where the goalie sticks his hands up in the air and they all run into the other side of the field, all that. If he continues doing the same stuff that he's been doing, he'll be a foolish boy. Because if you'd be stupid to think that John Kiley, Paul Kinnerk, Sean O'Donnell won't have come up with a plan for the stuff that they've been doing. He needs to come to something. He needs to bring something to the table totally different. But I think he's going to do that. Do you know what? If Limerick are playing Tipperary, Clare, Cork, anybody else, I'd be saying I just think Limerick will win. I still do think Limerick will win, but I'm intrigued because I just think it's going to be a mad game of hurling.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. Like, he's as you know, having watched Wexford for the last few years, he's not afraid to make interesting positional choices, Rory, and we've seen
you're gonna have Tyke Burke at full forward and Desi Hutchinson full back.
Hardy just looks at the personnel he has at his disposal, Rory, and says, just play them where they should play. They're fantastic hurlers, and give them a chance. But at the same time, there's lots of counties that have fantastic hurlers, Rory, and they play them where they should play them. And in the last year or two, Limerick, or 3 or 4, Limerick could be mowing them down. So maybe it does take a bit of sideways thinking.
Well, yes, but if you look at traditionally how he sets his teams up, it's quite defensive. He tries to, play that sweeper system, or certainly pack. He gets a few bodies back, makes the middle third as much of a war zone as he possibly can, and then tries to pick scores off from distance. They didn't create a whole pile of goal scoring opportunities right throughout the league. I don't see that changing on Sunday, where I think the reality for me, if anybody has any chance whatsoever of taking Limerick down, they're going to need to score 3 and maybe even 4 goals and just have a freakish day. So, but to Shane's point, this could be bonkers. Like, he's suspended, isn't he? Is Davy suspended?
Oh, geez, I hope not.
I think he is. I think Davy's suspended. I think he did he not in the last game of the league? Did he not get a? I
haven't heard that.
Could be wrong now that he might have a touchline ban, which I think will actually take from the pageantry around it.
I hope he doesn't.
Yeah, to a certain extent. But I just think with the way Limerick will play won't change. And if you go out and you set yourself up in the way that Waterford traditionally have, and certainly the way Davy likes his teams too, Limerick will just pick you off from distance. And then if they're struggling on that front, and if they're struggling to get good balls off, sure, then they just fire a couple into Armagh and away we go. We're off to the races. It's a very difficult puzzle to solve. I can't see Davy doing it. Certainly not in year one. And
I don't think it's a touchline ban, Roy. But if he does, there's a box down in Wexford. They can ship it up to Semple Stadium for no matter.
Yeah. But This is such a mad game, right? And I think Shane is spot on. This could be a 12-point hiding or a 1-point, cliffhanger. You just don't know.
But if it's the risk I'd have here, right, is two things there. You said is year one. I don't buy this year one, right, because he's not going into a team with a crowd of young lads that he's need to build up into he's going into a team that are ready made for him, right? So if even internally, if he's going on about year one, I just think it's a cop out myself. He's got players there ready to go. The second thing I'll say is that I do think he was going to come up with something mad, right? And I do think the players will buy into it, because generally that's what players do, right? If it goes wrong, or if it goes badly wrong, and they do end up getting a bit of a hiding, you'd be very surprised how quick things could turn internally then as well.
Well, it's a very difficult turnaround as well, because they've got to go to Páirc Uí Chaoimh the following week, with a Cork team that has been sort of wrapped up in cotton wool for the last few weeks and might be chomping at the bit. And all of a sudden, your season's on the line in the space of 6 days.
Very true. Looking at Limerick and Shane, there's very little to worry one, I would think, of a green persuasion. You'd have to take Kerry errorism to a whole new level if you were going to do that, Shane, and that's not your style, we know that. I'm more interested just your own perspective as a man who played inside forward for John Kiely. The evolution of the game is fascinating, and it was an extreme case, but it still so happened that Aaron Glan went 46 minutes to the league final without touching the ball from open play. It's striking how Limerick are playing the game, and I'm just wondering how you would have enjoyed that and adapted to it if you were still playing.
Yeah, I certainly wouldn't have been the man on my own inside anyway, Mikey. That wouldn't have been my game. When I was probably inside, it was more a route one job and get it done at half me. But the lads still after me. But listen, there's, in fairness to Aaron, the one thing I'd say is that he does that role very well, where he can be isolated inside, and when you fire the ball in, generally it sticks. And no score may come off it, but he generally make it stick. But they're definitely playing a small bit different than when I was in there. They're hand passing a lot more. They're striking from distance a lot more. But to be fair, what I will say is, like, when they do that, when they do leave him isolated inside, there's a huge amount of space, right? They create a huge amount of space, but they always leave one deep. The problem I see with other teams is they don't leave someone deep. They fall into that trap, right? But then I'm beginning to think, maybe it's impossible to leave someone deep, because now you're chasing Mike Casey up the field. Now you're chasing Barry Nash up the field. So I'm saying, why aren't teams just leaving somebody in really deep that they have an out ball every time? And then I'm saying, maybe it's actually quite hard because they're running up the field after someone. So, like obviously Limerick are what they are, right? I'm not going through the Kerryism, as you said. It's not my style. It's very hard to see them being turned over this weekend. Anyway, so there's no point looking forward for now. The one thing I'd say though is that, and it's hard for me as a Limerick person knowing the players, whatever else, is that it's nearly been frustrating watching them saying, why are teams doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results? Like, I was down to the league final. I know it was Derek Ling's first year, etc., etc. But I mean, I was looking, saying, like, this is bonkers stuff. Like, so the one thing I'm looking forward to the weekend is what
kind of bonkers.
what are Waterford going to bring that's going to just do something different? Even if they come with something mad and Limerick have to adapt and do something different and still win, so be it. No matter what Davy brings, nobody's expecting them to win. But if they say, here you go, Barry Nash from Nicky Quaid, take the puck out and we're going to do something else, you're wasting your time, right? So if they continue to do that, forget about it. You need somebody to do something different. I was on with Joe Canning a couple of times. He's a firm believer to go man on man. Personally, I wouldn't agree with it, but the last time a team done it was Cork in the 2021 All-Ireland final, and we saw what happened to them in the first half. But I definitely think if you do it in Munster Championship with a team that's so wound up, maybe it might work. I don't think it will. My point is they have to come with something different.
Yeah. Rory, do you think John Kiely knows his first 15 right now?
I think he does. I'd say what they've been doing internally would give him a fairly good indication. It's incredible, actually. I mean, I think he does. I think the rest of us haven't a clue because they've such a wealth of options. Like, pick their half forward line, Shane.
Well, I'd imagine it'd be Garrod, Keane and Tom, but and then you'd have Darragh and William in the middle of the field, isn't it? I don't see any reason why.
You don't see any change there.
I don't think change. No. The one person that could be hard on me, I thought Cathal O'Neill has been fantastic.
That's what I was saying. Yeah.
He could go like I don't even positions. What are positions anymore? He could go. He could be number 13 and be brought out to field. The other thing that's going to be interesting too is that Shane O'Brien and Adam English, who played very well in the early parts of the league, have been hindered in playing the last remaining league games because of the 20s championship. Limerick 20s play tomorrow night. Is Shane and Adam going to be playing with them or not? It is the most. I done a piece the other day about the rules that what the GAA have done over the last 12 or 24 months in relation. Some of the stuff that they've come out is just so bloody stupid, and this is just another. And I actually forgot to put in this piece. Right? Why would you try and stop lads and playing senior hurling? No, should they be playing Friday and Sunday? Obviously not. But Jesus, surely something else can be done. Anyway, that's another day. So their options. I probably think they'll play out to 20s, but don't tell me Shane O'Brien couldn't win there with 20 minutes to go and hold us on.
Exactly, yeah. And even in their full back line, like what do we see the full back line lining up as? Because it's kind of 4 into 3 there as well, is it, Shane?
It is, you're spot on, yeah. So, obviously, Sean Finn will be one corner, Barry Nash will be the other.
Sean Finn in his dungeon, as Jackie says.
I'd imagine it's a battle between Mike Casey and Dan Morrissey. So,
good luck, John Kiley, deciding there, huh?
yeah. But sometimes as a manager, you're probably going up to drop somebody, and you're actually saying you've done nothing wrong.
Yeah, that's a hard conversation, isn't it?
I'd actually say in early times it can be easier because you're just going to putting your hand up and saying, "Listen, we're going with X because we just believe that
it's a toss of a coin."
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, and look, in the grand scheme of things, it's a very good problem to have. So that, but it is still. I suppose that's why he's the manager. He has to make those decisions, and I'm sure he'll make a very informed decision as best he can. But as you say, Shane, he can be as informed as he wants, but it could be a toss of the coin at the end of the day, almost.
But one of the narratives that's around, and I'd be interested in Shane's view on this as well, Mikey, is that the entire championship and Munster and the All Ireland is a foregone conclusion. Limerick are the hottest and raging hottest of favourites. But I don't buy that the whole thing is just signed, sealed, and done and dusted.
Sure, we might as well pack up and
it isn't.
Leave it.
And you just don't know what could happen. Teams will struggle to get up to their level. That's a given. And I would be of the very strong view, if you go back through the traditions of GAA, generally speaking, even going back to the Kerry team of the 70s, 80s, the Kilkenny team of the 90s, Dublin, obviously, in the last 10 years, it generally isn't the case that teams get up to a dominant team's level. What invariably ends up happening is the team wilts over time and falls back to the pack. Now, that might not happen this year, and it may not happen next year, but it won't go on forever. And I definitely do think that the other teams, particularly in Munster and Kilkenny, Galway, will give Limerick plenty to think about.
And Shane, it's like Limerick are yet to go to despite all their dominance, they haven't managed a 100% record in a Munster championship yet. So to say the whole thing's a foregone conclusion is, we're not asking you for any Yearism here, but it is a foolish thing to say.
Look how close Clare ran Limerick on a couple of occasions last year. Yeah.
So you've something to play for, Shane.
I can't say that, Mikey. I can't say it's not a foregone conclusion because then I'm only thinking
Yeah. You're in a tight spot here.
Listen, I just think I think the reason Limerick are so down is because they're very good. I just question where other teams are at, what they've done differently in the last 6 months to take them down. Have they done stuff that that has really taken them out of their comfort zone, or have they just gone back training with an S&C and a coach and video analysis and nutritionist like every other team has, in the hope that they'll turn up in good condition and beat Limerick? If that has been the case, that's why I think teams will struggle. But in Waterford's situation, so can you imagine Davy come up with something mad, right? Limerick couldn't get into flow and they lost on Sunday. Now they're playing Clare in the Gaelic Crowns. Can you imagine Brian Lohan and that Clare team? We beat these shoulder and next thing they're out of the championship. Do you know what I mean? So that could happen. I don't see it, but it could.
Yeah. So we're saying the Limerick win here, lads. Yeah, I think despite Davy's mad hurling chemistry, we do think that Limerick are going to win. Yeah.
Not at this. They won't be losing this game on Sunday, but it could be it is a bonkers type of a fixture, and anything could happen.
Yeah. Okay. Moving on then to the slightly more traditional fare pub that we have on offer at 4 o'clock in Ennis, Clare v Tip.
The biggest game of the weekend.
Yeah, I think that's a fair. Well, Galway Kilkenny is a pretty big game, but probably a little bit less jeopardy given where those teams stand against their Leinster rivals. Shane, I said this to someone during the week. Clare have been quite quiet this year. There's been no dramas. There's been, as you said, they've had a few weeks off. Everyone seems to be fit. Shane O'Donnell has seamlessly just returned after taking the league off, and it seems very kind of calm there. And maybe to me, I think that suits them. There's been a fair bit of drama around the last few years. There doesn't seem to be any.
Drama and Clare.
Yeah, and so Dave Fitzgerald missing the game is kind of the only kind of speed bump, and it's a significant speed bump. But Clare to me seem like a team who are dangerously quietly motoring along.
Personally, I think that's the worst way it could be. I think they often prefer a chip on their shoulder and going to have points to prove. But anyway,
say something mean about them there, Shane.
I tell you, there's plenty of Clare people waiting for the next 5 minutes. Just to put you up
Here he comes. Yeah. Here he comes.
Sounds like 2 years in a row then for it to be my fault. But anyway, listen, massive game. I'd agree with your biggest game of the weekend. Again, I know Clare people probably shrugged their shoulders. I can see it. If you want to call it a turnover here, with Tipperary going down there taking a big one for a very simple reason. I said it last year when I said it the last couple of years. I think Liam Cahill and Mikey Beavens are the second best management team that are out there. I judge that on what I've seen with them doing Waterford. I don't care about the last 4 weeks of last year with Waterford, right? I've seen enough in the previous 2 and 3/4 years of what they've done and put them in a really strong position. They would, I know it's easy to say, but they would have won in All-Ireland if it wasn't for an exceptional Limerick team. Let's be honest about it, right? I believe anyway. And look at what he's done with Tipperary so far this year. He's just brought them to a level. They were at a mediocre level last year. He's brought them to a phenomenal level this year. But underneath it all, there is a burning desire for Liam Cahill to walk out at the end of this Munster Championship, give the 2 fingers to many people and say, I didn't get it wrong last year. It wasn't my fault by having Waterford so wound up for the league. He done the same with Tipperary this year. Did a fantastic, 30 minutes against Limerick, and then they still did okay, all things considered, right? But I definitely think he has kept something in reserve for himself and for the group for the Munster Championship, and I base that on Liam Cahill is not a calm individual. He'd be no different to John, probably different to Davy, but no different to John or Derek Ling or any of the lads where they get a bit wound up. And I thought Liam Cahill was very sophisticated on the sideline this year in the league. I definitely think he's kept something in reserve in the hope to pull Tipperary out of Munster, which would be a massive result for him.
They have it is Rory Tipperary's kind of resurgence is a strong word. They had one particularly bad year last year. There's plenty of reasons for that. But he has, he's managed to blood a lot of new players. He's experimented with lads in new positions, and he has clearly recognised one way to beat Limerick, perhaps, or to beat any team, I guess, in modern hurling, is to score a lot of bloody goals, and he's kind of built a team around that. But as Shane says, that may not be the be-all and end-all for Liam Cahill. He may have something else up his sleeve, which is an interesting and exciting prospect.
Yeah, I think Shane is absolutely spot on in relation to a management team. I think very, very smart fella. I mean, if you even go back to when he was over the Tipperary under-20s, they beat Cork in a Munster final, in an All-Ireland final, 2018, maybe 2019, and this was a star-studded Cork team. This was a Cork team dripping with lads who obviously went on and subsequently went up into the Cork senior team, and not too many of that Tipperary team have graduated yet, having gotten a 20 or 25 point beating in the Munster round robin, managed to turn it around in an All-Ireland final, which gives you an indication of the credentials and how much he can learn on the hoof. I think you're looking at the way he's managed to revitalise the team very, very quickly. We did an interview with him actually in advance of the All-Ireland final in 2020, the COVID final, which was an odd one actually, because nobody was allowed out and you were driving roads of Ireland with, it's like ghost towns. I'll never forget it. Jesus, who wants to go back there? But I was very struck by him. I think the minute he walked into the room, sometimes some guys, when they do walk into a room, you can just feel there's an air of authority here. There's an air of respect. He's also quite honest in the same way that John Kiley is as well. I like that in a manager. I don't think they sugarcoat things. They do give generally honest assessments before and after games in his interviews. And,
to his players as well, by all accounts.
Yeah, I think that's to be commended. But I think that probably speaks as well to his ability to get a panel and a bunch of players on site to buy into what he's trying to do. I'd imagine Bevan's coaching is top class. They will be primed for this, and I agree with Shane. This is going to be fire and brimstone, really, really competitive, and I think they could go down there and turn Clare over. I do.
Sorry, Mikey. What I haven't seen just in recent years. In fairness, there was a bit in the Clare Limerick Munster final last year now as well, right? I would say, but just like this is Tipperary Clare, arguably nobody can really call the winner. Down in Ennis, like are we going to see what I grew up, and I'm obviously not that old, but where teams would like there'd be arguments, rows, brawls, fellas really wanting to show how much that it means to people to win. I just haven't seen it in recent years in most championships, nearly because there is even if we do lose, we still have another chance to a certain degree. Like if I'm a Tipperary or a Clare player this weekend, Jesus, this should be. You should be playing this game as if it's you lose and you're out. And I think both, I'm no doubt that you'll see from the management, but on field as well. Obviously, you got to be careful in that. But I haven't seen maybe at times from teams in recent years how much it really means to be in the Munster Championship and to win. Obviously, you do that by the scoreboard, but even at times things should boil over. If you're so wound up as this Munster Championship, early on at least anyway, things should boil over. I haven't seen it in recent years. Maybe there's a small bit of a tradition coming out of me as well, but it's a massive game, especially the fact that realistically, with no great authority, nobody could really call the winner thinking that they're 100% right.
Yeah, and the other thing as well, Mikey, the way the fixtures are set up for Clare this year, it's quite tricky. I mean, they have Tipperary at home. They lose that, they've got to go into the Gaelic grounds the following week, where, let's be honest, people won't give them much of a chance of, look, they'll give themselves a chance, I'm sure. But and the fact that the way the bye weeks are working in Munster as a result of 5 teams, just the timetable of fixtures is going to pose another problem for them. And I think that's what probably feeds into how important this game is on Sunday. Because if they lose on Sunday, they're immediately on the back foot with a glut of games coming, and potentially with injury suspensions and all of that goes with it. And then you're into absolute must-win scenario heading to the Gaelic grounds. Good luck with that one.
Yeah. Where do you see this being won and lost then, Shane? Because I look at the Tipperary forwards I've discussed, and they're very they're goal orientated in Jake Morris, Jason Ford. Obviously, you've got a couple of big scorers, big men, but their defense has kind of been overhauled as well. Mikey Breen going in at full back, and Dan McCormick running they're a big, strong, powerful team, Tipperary. But then you look at the Clare forwards, and they're no wilting violets either. So it's it could be where would you focus on when you're looking at where this is going to be won and lost?
So I think definitely if you were looking at Waterford over the last couple of years, the one thing that they obviously had a huge emphasis on was goals, and they did score a lot of goals. Struggled a bit against Limerick, and actually obviously Tipperary struggled a bit against Limerick as well in the league semi-final to get goals. But in saying that, I love, and I've seen I've seen trends. So that's the beauty of maybe working on the Sunday nights, whatever, that you get to really look deep into the analysis, right? And I've seen trends with Waterford where they get a ball 40 yards out, the easy score is on, but they see green grass and they run, they go for goal. Tipperary did the same this year against Waterford in the last league game, was it, or second last league game, whatever it was, right? And they got goals where most other teams would have put them over the bar. Point is, when they get a sniff of an opportunity, they've obviously been trained and coached to go for it, right? They do create opportunities. Yes, it hasn't happened against Limerick, but they're not playing Limerick this weekend, so forget about that. So I definitely think they're going to go after that. The second thing is, and it's a stupid word, it's not a stupid word, like work rate, right? Oh yeah, everyone does it, and we all have it hanging on the walls in the dressing room. I'm sure we all know what work rate means. But I'd actually ask the question, do people really know what it means? I listened to an interview with Jim McGuinness, a podcast, with Jim McGuinness, right? And he gave it was absolutely brilliant. It was on the Examiner pod, and I recommend anybody to listen to it, right? And he basically said, like, most teams are operating at 85%. They think they're going as hard as they can. They're saying they're going as hard as they can. But are they really? The one thing I'd say about Tipperary is I'd say they're going as hard as they can. I think I've seen a massive work ethic out of them from all over the field, but mainly their forwards, which is really important. And I think that Liam Cahill and Mikey Beavens have really instilled that in the Tipperary group. And that's where I think it'll be one and last come back to is, yes, I think they'll get goals. But the second thing is, I think Clare could struggle to get quality ball inside just because of the ferocity of where Tipperary have been playing at this year.
Okay. Rory, there's a lot of talk about the Clare forwards, like Aidan McCarthy, Showdown coming back, Tony Kelly remaining Tony Kelly. Do you think that not they'll struggle for scores, but if it were to turn into a bit of a shootout, do you think that do the Tipperary forwards trump Clare at the moment, or how would you see it?
Yeah, I'd say, look, I think they're very evenly matched. Yeah, on both sides of the fence in terms of, is Shamie Cal still injured? Don't see him necessarily making it back. I think he was gone really. So I would say they're probably fairly evenly matched. I just think Shane's point again, spot on. That's just a work rate that Tipperary will bring. The fact that they will probably go for goals. Now, the last time they went down there, they did win. And I know that they do have a good home record, in fairness to Clare, in Cusack Park. So I'm sure that'll be something that they'll want to defend in some way, give themselves the best options, the best chance, I suppose, of being in that 3 to get out of Munster. But it's a really hard game to call. Really, really hard.
But you both seem to be leaning towards Tip, are you?
I think so. Yeah, I think here's what I would say. These are two of the teams in Munster that are best disposed to actually putting it up to Limerick in a real way. And whoever comes out on top on Sunday, I think, will go into whatever game, at whatever round they're playing Limerick. I think we'll get a really good sense of what kind of an All-Ireland Championship we're going to have then.
Okay. And Shane, you think Tip could do it, yeah?
Yeah, narrowly, yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna stick with Clare. As I said, the lack of drama. I think it might suit them. I do think it's been too much of a soap opera down there.
You're not on the podcast on Monday.
Yeah, I don't have to explain myself. So. I don't have to explain. I don't have to show my workings. Okay, moving to Leinster. I think we can assume, even if Billy Drennan is injured, that Kilkenny will get over Westmeath.
It's a big blow, though. That's a big blow.
It is a big blow.
That word coming out.
It means TJ gets to take the freeze. It saves Derek Ling an awkward conversation. Antrim and Dublin, briefly, if Wexford's league form carries into the championship, Shane, I'm afraid to say that you could be looking at Antrim versus Dublin. Could be almost a playoff between the third and fourth best teams. You never know. You could be looking at one of those two taking the third spot in Leinster. It's in Corrigan Park. Both teams had reasonable leagues. Antrim's probably better because maybe expectations were a little bit lower. How do you see this one going?
Do you know, it was this time last year I actually tipped up Antrim to beat Dublin in the back of their league form, and they were disappointing, right? They were disappointing. And Dublin were good, in fairness, right? They did beat them by 8 or 9 points for a finish. I'm going to go with Antrim again this year. I think, like, Antrim are sick of these moral defeats now. Like, you've done well and just unlucky. Like, don't underestimate Corrigan Park. Like, it is an absolute mad old spot, right? And it's very hard to go up there and get a win. And like Dublin this year, like Micheál O'Donoghue, smashing fella, very clever guy. Their league performances haven't inspired me, but again, what do you read into that? But like, it's about time now. Antrim are well capable of getting one over here, right? And I'm saying, if Kilkenny went up there in the morning, if Wexford went up there in the morning, like, I wouldn't be. It shouldn't be the massive shock if it was to happen. And I think it's up to Antrim now, where they are mentally, where Darren Gleeson is with them. They shouldn't be going in as massive underdogs to this in their own minds. They've had a fantastic league. They're able to perform against the big teams up there. They should want to be able to take a scalp this weekend. And if I turned around and I saw that Antrim won by 2 or 3 points, for me it wouldn't be the biggest of shocks. But for them themselves, they've had good leagues for the last couple of years. They need to get one in the championship now.
Yeah, Rory, you would imagine I think you fancy Dublin to get a job done here, do you?
I do.
Donald Burke's Dublin.
Well, that's exactly the point I was going to make. Just the first thing to say though, Corrigan Park, and Shane mentioned how mad the place is. I was up there. I think it was last year. Cork actually ended up going up there. I think in a first round qualifier. Was that last year? I think it was. Yeah, and
I think it was last year. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. It is an interesting venue. That's for sure. It's very open. You kind of feel like you're slightly high up. It's always windy. It may as well be like Salt Hill insofar as its exposure, and I think there's a little bit of a slope on the pitch as well at one corner. So it will obviously play to Antrim's advantage, because I'd imagine they probably do a good bit of their training there as well. But I just think if you kind of boil it down to like have Antrim a forward of the class of Donald Burke, I would say no. And have they a defender of the class of Owen O'Donnell, I would say no. And I think when you've got two anchor tenants on either side of the field, that will give you a chance when you're playing a team that's trying to make that breakthrough, because they'll have the experience, they'll have the know-how, and they also have the hurling, obviously. So I don't necessarily, in fact, what I'd probably go so far as to say is the three teams that I think will win this weekend will be the three teams that will come out of Leinster. And yeah, I think that.
Who are they, Rory?
I think Dublin, Galway, Kilkenny. I think the three of them will win, and I think they'll be the three that will come out of Leinster. Apologies, Mikey.
This is it. You see, he's angry with me for leaving the podcast, and this is
get the boot in. I'm getting the boot in before you go.
I've done horribly. I can't really disagree with you. I don't know why I've left Wexford versus Galway to be the last match I discuss on the podcast, but that's what I've done. I remember it like it was yesterday, the last time Wexford beat Galway in the championship, that All-Ireland semi-final in 1996.
They didn't Wexford under Davy go up to Salt Hill a couple of years ago in maybe the first or the second year of the round robin and get a draw?
Yes.
Now it was a very different Wexford at that time. I think it might have been quite low scoring as well. Was it maybe 19 points apiece, just off the top of my head now? But look, they're not going up there without hope, but Jenny, I mean,
or maybe they are. The hope ain't weighing us down either, I'll tell you that. Shane, Wexford being without Matthew Hanlon and Damien Reck is huge. Obviously, Galway are missing Davy Burke, but let's be fair, Galway's resources are a little bit deeper than Wexford at the moment, aren't they?
Just go back to that game where Wexford played Tipperary in a challenge match a couple of weeks ago. Do you know what the score was in that game? Did I read that right?
It wasn't close. It wasn't close.
Yeah, Tipperary won well, didn't they?
They did, yeah.
It'll be one thing in the league, right? And you could say, right, the league was league, whatever. Now we're playing a really championship challenge game that we really need to go after. Then they got a bit of a high. I thought I saw the score. I
think it was about 20 points, Shane.
Yeah. Right,
it was big. It was big, yeah.
So listen, on all, like I said it a couple when who was it hammered? Clare hammered Wexford down in Wexford Park, right? And my point after that was like, we can all lose by 8 or 9 or 10 points. But when you concede, it was 6 goals and they were hammered. I just wonder, is everything rosy there? That was my point back then. Then they wimpled out of the league. They got a hiding in a challenge match. Confidence can't behind that group. Now, if they turn around, more power to them. But it's impossible to see.
They've had a couple of really good under-20 victories there over the last few years, Mikey. And we all know George O'Connor and a few key Wexford people and Liam Griffin started a few different initiatives to try and push hurling and get hurling going, where there was street hurling and, to try and lift Wexford out of the slump that they were in, we'll say maybe 10 or 15 years ago. And it reaped big rewards in and around the likes of the Conor McDonalds and all of these players that did come through. Has that stalled in some way?
I don't know if it's stalled. I just, for whatever reason, Wexford have never had a massive pick of players. There's never been a situation like, there's plenty of clubs. Maybe it's partly to do with it being a dual county, but I've never known a Wexford panel where you said there was, Jesus, it doesn't matter who drops out, there's somebody else to come in for them. That's never been the case. Wexford have often had a strong 15, 16, 17 players, but have been pretty reliant on that. You go back to 1996 as a case in point. There's just too many players injured at the moment. There's too many key players who are missing. The panel's too light, and like the youth that's coming through isn't at the same level as Matthew Hanlon and Liam Ryan and Damien Reck are injured. Like that's That's half your defence, and it's the strongest half of your defence. Some counties can absorb kind of that level of injury and bad luck. Wexford can't, is basically it, Which brings us to Galway, I suppose, Shane, and the fact that Henry Shefflin has made a point in his first 2 years of, geez, I think if I was a Galway man, I might have got a game for Galway at this stage. Like he's left no stone unturned. It seemed he's given everybody a go. Do you think he's uncovered any genuine championship starters this year that are going to be pushing for that first 15 who weren't there last year?
My honest answer is I don't know. If I had to sit down and pick a Galway team in the morning on the basis of knowing maybe 25 players, I wouldn't have a clue, right? I don't think anybody has a clue. And I think, in fairness, I think the only team that I would maybe cut a bit of slack for in the league outside of Limerick and possibly Tipperary would be Galway, because I think Henry knows he's got a group there that are capable of winning an All-Ireland. So the league for him, he really just wanted to try find, if he only found 2 players in the league, I think it would have been a massive achievement for him. I don't think he cared about it. I thought they were quite poor in it, but as I said, I think there was reasons for that. I definitely think he has to surely have found it. Just 2, right? I'm saying 2, maybe 3 players. If he's found them, that can be enough to have a good, strong 15 and to have 3 or 4 lads on the bench as well. So I don't know what he's found. I don't know who's going to start, but I definitely think he has a team there that is the strongest to go after honours this year, even though we haven't seen in the league.
One interesting thing though with Henry, this is obviously his second year, so it'll be, and I think these are little subplot stories all over the shop that I'm really looking forward to. Obviously, Davy will be taking on Clare. Now, that's not the first time that he's come up against his own county, given the fact that he was with Wexford and Waterford before. But you've got Liam Cahill, and when Tipperary play Waterford, and I think what will be very interesting will be Henry on the sideline in Nolan Park with a Galway bib on him. I think that'll be quite the sight, and the reception.
The handshake might be a bit more straightforward, though. You'd imagine the handshake, Rory, do you think there's anything in the fact that Henry Shefflin, he's been, maybe it's different at local level, but at national level, I think he's been able to operate under the radar a little bit, simply because Galway is a true dual county, and at the moment the footballers are probably garnering quite a lot of the headlines and quite a lot of the attention, given how well they're going, and the fact that they've also got a high profile match at the weekend. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe at local level it's the same focus on the Galway hurlers as ever, but I get the impression, like, almost a bit like Clare, we haven't heard or seen a whole lot of Shefflin and Galway this year. Like, it's not like they haven't kind of broken into the public consciousness, I feel, just yet.
No, and they didn't make the league semi-finals, and I think that probably suited them to a degree as well, where they could go off and maybe, really, I suppose, get ready ahead of championship. I think Henry's always kind of kept a reasonably low profile. I mean, he's a very serious individual, a pure winner. I mean, we saw last year how gutted he was, where he was nearly pushing the camera away after they got beaten by Kilkenny in the Leinster final, and we saw how crushed he looked after the All-Ireland semi-final against Limerick. And I think from his point of view, he's very much, he's not driving up and down the road to Galway, wasting his time. Like, he's in there to win, and I think they will. I'd fancy them to win Leinster and to be in an All-Ireland semi-final, which means the chances are they'll avoid Limerick on the other side, if that's how we all see that playing out. But the only thing for me with them was, look, Joe going is a big blow, fair enough. Have they found one or two forwards that just might give them that little bit of an edge up front? They're still dependent on Conor Whelan to do most of their ball winning for them. Now, what a player to have to do that. Like, he's got similarities to Aaron Gillan in many ways, but if they could add maybe just a small bit more up front, I think defensively they're as good as anybody out there. I mean, the likes of Jack Grealish, Davy Burke, the Manions. I just think maybe up front they have to maybe just add a couple of more strings to the bow, and yeah, Galway are going to be super competitive, lads.
Yeah, that does seem to be the one hesitancy, Shane, I think, about Galway is, not Joe Canning, like, he's gone long enough, we don't need to keep, but it is that scoring forward. Like, people are kind of saying Evan Nyland needs to put his hand up and, contribute more from open play. Like, and you've got, I suppose, Conor Cooney's scores a fair amount, but they don't seem to have. Maybe they've got a better spread of scorers, and maybe that kind of is kind of hidden. Or do you think actually saying they have a better spread of scorers is a way of saying they don't have one dominant scorer?
One name you haven't mentioned there is Cavan Mannion. I think I'd have him in. I have serious regard for him as a hurler now. I think they have the hurlers. They just haven't been up top. And when they're all there, they just haven't been consistent. I mean, Conor Cooney can absolutely score 8 points in play someday, and then the next day just mightn't be that consistent. So
I hope he's like that on Saturday.
Unfortunately for Galway, yes, Joe's gone long enough, if you want to say it, even though he's not really, and he's still going to be the tip of everyone's tongue for the next couple of years. Oh, they've no Joe Canning. They need to forget about that now, and they need. Yeah. I'm not saying create their own Joe.
That's what I mean. I don't mean I'm not trying to dismiss him. I'm just saying you can't lean on that crutch for. There's only so long you can lean on that, Yeah. Okay, so we're all saying a Wexford win then, yeah?
No.
No,
unfortunately not. A home advantage will count on that one as well, and I think Galway will win. Pulling up, unfortunately, Mikey.
I look, I'm not deluded. Well, I am sometimes, but not today. So listen, we'll leave it at that. Just to give you a run through of where the games can be watched, because a lot of games are available on GAA Go. Sligo, New York is on GAA Go 2:30 on Saturday. Kerry Tipperary is at 4 p.m. on GAA Go. Cavan Armagh is at 6:30 on GAA Go. So all the game there's 3 games live on Saturday on GAA Go. Obviously that Ulster game is also on BBC. Sunday then Roscommon Galway is on RTÉ2 at 4 o'clock. Laois Dublin's on GAA Go at 3:30. And in the Hurling, Waterford Limerick is on RTÉ2 and the Player at 2 o'clock. And Clare Tipperary is on GAA Go. So as you could just...
it's a full-time job watching all these matches.
Yes, you can just vegetate. Hopefully my ankle won't recover in time for this half marathon on Sunday, and I'll be able to watch them as well. So we'll see. Listen, just to say thank you to Shane, and earlier to Eamonn and to Rory. And Rory will be back on Monday with Jackie Hurley. And sure, I'll probably pop up at some stage in the future anyway. So thank you and good luck. We'll talk to you later.
We earned it by winning the last 2 matches on the road, and that's not going to be taken away from us.
But what I love in hurling, I love players that never give in.
He hits it! It's over the bar! Oh! Holy Moses!